Hello, everybody. Thank you very much for watching. I'm Orlando Ruiz Jr. Welcome to another classic movie review. This is my review of 1992's Batman Returns. This is Tim Burton's sequel to his 1989 blockbuster film Batman. This movie stars Michael Keaton, Danny DeVito, Michelle Pfeiffer, Christopher Walken. This is a movie that I'm reviewing because I'm very, very excited for the upcoming Flash movie that is about to be released in a few days. I'm very excited for the return of Michael Keaton in the bat suit, even if it's just a supporting role. Very much like Tim Burton's first Batman film from 1989, where Jack Nicholson's Joker steals the show. That kind of happens here with Danny DeVito's Penguin and Michelle Pfeiffer's Catwoman. The two of these actors are excellent. After Jack Nicholson's Joker, other big actors wanted to come in and play a Batman villain, sort of like the villain of the week, very much in the tradition of the 1960s Adam West Batman TV show, where you had big stars in the role of the main bad guys in different episodes. And that very much is in line and keeping in the tradition of Batman, in my opinion. Catwoman slash Selena Kyle is basically a woman scorned who is on a path for revenge, and that's her overall plot in this film. But the way that Michelle Pfeiffer plays this part, Catwoman is very much a damaged person in this movie. The way she becomes Catwoman is kind of tragic, and there are times when you do see the wheels turning in her head in certain scenes. It's brilliant, brilliant acting on part of Michelle Pfeiffer. The way she plays this part, you see that she really does want to be a good person at times, because before she turned into Catwoman, she was a good person. And the incident that made her Catwoman has really messed with her head, and so you do see this sort of internal struggle happening, and it's very well executed. I love this character. It's one of the best things about this movie. The version of the Penguin that we see in this movie is very different from any other version that we've seen before this movie or since this movie. He isn't the sophisticated, aristocratic criminal that we all remember from the 1960s show. As much as I do love the Burgess Meredith version, because he's a version that I fell in love with as a kid, and I do appreciate what Matt Reeves did with the character, and I love Colin Farrell's performance in The Batman as the Penguin. Great, great performance. But honestly, Danny DeVito's performance as the Penguin is still my favorite, because it has been edged in stone in my mind ever since I was 10 years old. The first time I saw this in the theater, I just remember the reaction from the audience, and I know a lot of parents immediately walked out and said, "Not for my kids," the minute he bit some guy's nose, or when he has some overtly sexual lines that might be inappropriate for younger viewers, since this was sort of marketed towards little kids. Unfortunately, Happy Meals, that didn't go over very well. But the black goo coming out. There's one point where he has like this black goo. It looks kind of like has this greenish black tint to it. It was a little too gross for people at the time. Legendary director Howard Hawks, who directed the classic 1932 version of Scarface, was once famously quoted for saying, "A good movie has three good scenes and no bad scenes." In my humble opinion, Batman Returns has at least five great scenes. And for me, the first great scene in the film is the transformation of Selena Kyle into Catwoman. And the music that plays during this scene is some of my favorite music that I've heard in any film. It's not just one of my favorite scenes in a comic book film, it's one of my favorite scenes of all time. The next scene in the film that I consider to be great scene number two is the scene where the Penguin is lured by Max Schrek with a raw fish downstairs from his upstairs hideout into this office where there's a bunch of people waiting to clap and applaud the Penguin as he learns that he is in the running for the candidacy of mayor in Gotham City. And he's eating this raw fish, and it looks really gross, and the whole Penguin running for mayor thing, it's just something that's kind of near and dear to my heart, because I am such a big fan of the 1960s Adam West Batman TV show. And there was an episode in that series where the Penguin was running for mayor. And even in 92, even though there was already that first film, with its sequel, Tim Burton still was paying homage to Batman 66. And I really think that's pretty awesome. Even in the early 90s, Batman couldn't escape a little bit of the 60s. Great scene number three in the film, at least for me, is the scene where Batman meets the Penguin for the first time and confronts him on the streets of Gotham City. It's one of my favorite little exchanges of dialogue in the movie. And earlier in the movie, Bruce Wayne was a little optimistic about the Penguin when he first presented himself as a hero, and so he gives him the benefit of the doubt at first, and even goes as far as to sympathize with the Penguin when the Penguin is talking about how he wants to find his parents because he's never met them. And you really see the orphan inside of Bruce when he says out loud, with Alfred in the background, "I hope he finds them." And that cuts deep if you're a Batman fan. And so when he finally does do the research and finds out more about the Penguin and then meets him face to face for the first time on the streets of Gotham, that's what makes that little exchange so much more exciting because he knows who he's dealing with. He knows he's dealing with a bad guy. And we know that this is a classic rivalry that's been in the making for years because this was our first big screen interpretation of the Penguin since the 60s Batman TV show. So it was just exciting. It was just cool to be there and experience it for the first time when this first came out in 1992. Like in 1989, when you saw the Joker on the big screen for the first time, because 89 it was the 50th anniversary of Batman in the comics, it felt special when you saw that in the theater. It felt the same in 92 with Batman Returns, seeing, Catwoman on the big screen and the Penguin on the big screen, and that moment where they have this exchange of dialogue and there's an explosion that sort of punctuates this scene at the end, and then Catwoman's like doing somersaults as she flips into frame, and then we get this great introduction of Batman meeting Penguin meeting Catwoman, all three of them together. Number four in Batman Returns, at least according to me once again, is the scene where Bruce Wayne and Selina Kyle are on a date at Wayne Manor. They're on a couch sitting in front of this huge fireplace, nice little atmosphere going. The dialogue in this scene is very well written, nice little subtext in there, sort of hinting at their alter egos a little bit. And one of the things that I really love about this scene is you really get a sense of the duality of both of these characters. There's a nice little nod to Vicky Vale from the first movie, Bruce Wayne's love interest in that first movie, and they start to make out a little bit, and they both have a couple of injuries from their previous fight in the film as Batman and Catwoman. And as they start to touch each other's injuries, the moment has to come to a halt as there's a report on the news about someone being kidnapped, and then Bruce knows that it's time to go out and do his job, basically. Nice little Batman moment as he has to leave and get ready to go out and fight crime, while Alfred has to sort of coax Selina out of Wayne Manor without giving anything away. I think Michelle Pfeiffer kills it in this scene, and all throughout this movie, she's given moments to demonstrate what a great actress she is, whether it's being menacing or vulnerable or doing some light comedy. And there are scenes all throughout this movie, like this one, where she demonstrates some great comedic timing. Great scene number five in Batman Returns, at least according to me, once again for the last time, is the scene where Bruce Wayne and Selina Kyle show up at this masquerade ball. And throughout the movie, they've been fighting each other as their alter egos, and then they show up at this masquerade ball. Everybody else is wearing masks and costumes, and they show up no mask, no costumes. It's a nice little moment between the two of them where they just get to be themselves for a little bit, and the exchange of dialogue here is very cleverly written. I don't want to give away how this scene ends because it ends in one of my favorite moments in any comic book film. It's one of those moments where you just see these characters as people and you forget that they were in a comic book because of the performances, because of how good Keaton is and Pfeiffer, and then Danny DeVito showing up to, liven things up a bit and get the third act rolling. It is just one of those great moments for me that makes me remember how much I appreciate and love these characters. In an old interview with director Tim Burton, where he discusses audiences' reactions to Batman Returns, I remember he talked about how some people would say to him they thought the film was much lighter in tone compared to the first film, and some people would say to him they thought it was much darker in tone compared to the first film. And dark and light, and they're complete opposites, and how can this be? And I gotta say, when I think about the film, I completely understand because uh, some parts of the film can be interpreted as maybe a bit on the corny side due to the nature of the aesthetic of the film. Back then, the visual look of the film was achieved with matte paintings and optical effects and model work to bring Gotham City to life. And the costumes of the 80s and 90s weren't the kind of tactical looking, more realistic approach that they're trying to do nowadays. And so, it does give it this more comic booky feel that some people might, consider a bit corny or cheesy and lighter in tone. And so I think that's where, the light comes from. The aspects of Batman Returns that may make the film seem a bit more darker is some of the violence in the film. Tim Burton doesn't shy away of showing a bit more blood in this one, and of course some of the dialogue in the film does have quite a bit of sexual innuendo as well. So a bit more mature themes in this one. As a young kid, I was a reader of a lot of the old Batman comics, and I always took these two first Tim Burton films as a great representation of the old era of Batman, the era of Batman where Batman used to dip its toe in horror elements at times. And the villains in these comics, the Batman Rogues Gallery of Villains, there's some pretty scary people. And if you read these comics, you see how evil they can be. And I think it's only right that the movies reflect that. And I think that these movies, these two Tim Burton movies, capture the spirit of those 30s and 40s era Batman comics. I gave Batman Returns 3.5 stars. It's one of my favorite comic book films. I love this movie. For me, it's not as great as the first film. I give the first film 4 stars. For me, that one is a masterpiece. Batman Returns is such a great companion piece to the first film. The music score in this movie is excellent. I just love Danny Elfman's music all throughout this movie. Even though Batman's theme is a bit more powerful sounding in the first film, at least to me, there's some great villain themes in this movie. And when I walked out of that theater back in 1992, not everybody, felt like I did. Some people walked out of the theater loving it like me, and some people didn't, and that's okay. Everybody has different tastes, and the great thing about these characters that were created back in 1939 by Bill Finger and Bob Kane is these are bold and broad characters that have been around for decades because of all the different interpretations and all the creative minds that have put their own little spin on the characters throughout the years. And that's the way they've survived for so long. And the great thing about that is we all have different versions. We have more edgier type versions we can watch or read about. Some people can check out the more lighter fare if they want to. And I think that's pretty damn cool because I can enjoy the 60s show. I even enjoy the Schumacher movies. I love what Nolan did in his trilogy, and I even enjoy the Zack Snyder version of Batman. I'm kind of a Batman whore. Just give it all to me. That's the kind of fan I am. But not everybody's like me. Some people are a little more choosy, and that's cool. But this is a movie that I do recommend for anyone that's into action movies, fantasy movies, comic book movies. This movie can't be found on streaming, particularly Max or HBO Max or whatever the hell they want to call it now. But like I'm always telling everybody, if you don't want to get Max, get yourself a hard copy. They're out there, and you should get them while they're still making them because one day they will stop making them. Personally, I love the hard copies, grew up with them, so that's why I'm always trying to endorse these babies. And that is my Batman Returns Blu-ray. All you need is that bat symbol on the front. Just like back in the day when these movies came out, we had the bat symbol on the poster. We didn't have a title, just the bat symbol. I kind of wish they did that with the cases too, but either way, kick-ass bat symbol right there. 1992's Batman Returns. Heck of a comic book movie in my opinion. So that's going to do it for this comic book movie review. Thank you all very much for watching. I very much appreciate it. If you're into this kind of thing and if you're new to the channel, hit that bell and subscribe and look out for more classic movie reviews. I like to talk about stuff from the 90s on down, and every now and then I'll talk about a new film if I've just watched something. For those of you that are curious if I'm going to give you a review of Guardians 3 or Spider-Man Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, excuse me. If you're curious to what I thought about those films, I'll just tell you right now, they're awesome. And yeah, I don't plan on doing any of those reviews for those anytime soon, but eventually I do plan on doing a favorite comic book movie list. And if those movies make it in there, then I will talk about those movies a little bit more in depth. But thank you very much for watching this classic movie review. I'm very, very excited for The Flash. It's about to come out, and I can't wait to see Michael Keaton back on the big screen in that batsuit one more time. I am thrilled to death to watch this movie. Can't wait. And yeah, a good way to bone up for this, by the way, is check out Batman and Batman Returns, and then go see The Flash. You might want to check out Man of Steel and whatever DCEU movies that lead up to it, but thank you very much for watching. Be sure to comment, share, like, and look out for the next classic movie review. Thank you all. I appreciate you. Take care of each other. Peace out.